Hey, everybody, and welcome to this month's version of Two Southern Susans, where we're going to interview Kristy Woodson Harvey, the New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly best-selling author of 12 novels, many of which have been optioned for or in development for film. And she has numerous accolades, which I'm not going to take your time saying them to you because they're all over the internet. You cannot miss them. She is on fire, this woman, but she has taken time out of her book tour to talk to us about Beach House Rules, which I just finished and absolutely loved. I think it's my favorite of your books so far.
That is high praise. Well, thank you. I'm so happy to see both of you beautiful Southern Susans. Two Southern Susans is the cutest thing I've ever heard. I love that. Thank you for having me. And you know how much I love this group, and I'm so happy to be here. So thank you. I'm honored.
Oh, we are honored to interview you. I've finished the book very recently, and I too was just delighted by it. And I just think you went beyond with the plotting in this book.
Yeah, plotting's not normally what I do.
It's good. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's lots of twists and turns that we don't expect.
So I have the first question, and also Pat Dupuy in the group asked this same question. So I want to give her hat tip here. But talk to us first about the setting. I'm always all about the setting, especially with these beach books. Is Juniper Shores based on a real place? I was intrigued by the section with the hammocks and the Airstreams. I want to go there. Where is this?
Yes. Okay. So I will say, so I'll start with the hammocks and the Airstream since you started with that. That piece of the setting was definitely based on Seaside, Florida, like in that 30A stretch of like Rosemary and Alice and Seaside. And there is an Airstream village there. And I think it is like the cutest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, I just have to put this in a book. But I think the setting at large is really more Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. And there's a lot of like geographically, it's very similar to that. There's a lot that takes place at the Circle, which is a real place in Atlantic Beach. But the Seaside Airstream Village sort of zhuzhed it up a little. The one at Atlantic Beach is not quite as fancy.
But there is one at Atlantic Beach with the
there is a circle, like this circle in Atlantic Beach where like all the restaurants are, and it's like on the beach, and there's an old lifeguard stand, and there's like a bunch of businesses, and it's really cool. It's just a little more it's a little older, it's a little more rustic. Like it's not that the Airstream Village is very like shiny and chic. So I sort of put the shiny chic Airstream Village in the circle.
Well, why not? You get to create whatever you want.
Why not?
Exactly. I've always gone to South Carolina beaches with one or two exceptions. I'm not sure why, because as you know, I grew up in North Carolina, but it was always South Carolina beaches. I guess that's what my parents liked.
Same for me. I think where we grew up, we were just so much closer to South Carolina beaches. I had never been to North Carolina Beach until I was like 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Susie, it's your turn.
Oh, okie doke. All right. So you have several, I guess we would call them main characters, but the one I think of as numero uno is Charlotte.
Yeah.
And she's at a loss when her husband Bill is arrested in jail for a white collar finance crime. And she's unable to stay in her house, and she has no clear plan. And she accepts this invitation for her and her daughter Iris to live at a commune, which of course, Susan and I were talking about this before you came on. Neither of us had heard of a commune before. So I'm thinking about myself, when I would have been this age. Yes. And from a personal standpoint, I guess I'm a person set in my ways. I don't know if I could have adapted to communal living. So I'm going to want to know, what about you, Kristy? Did the idea appeal to you as you were writing the plot, if you had been in Charlotte's circumstances, or terrify you, or somewhere in between?
Okay, so this is really interesting that you said this, because I think this is very generational. And I'm wondering, and I know y'all are going to be like, this cannot be why, but I swear to you, I think this is why. I think it's because my generation grew up on like Full House and Kate and Allie, and then Fuller House when we got older, and even like the Golden Girls, like watching with our like
Yeah.
I don't know, like I think there is something about that everyone's like, what a great idea. Or like, I'll go on a beach trip with my friends and I'm like, this would be so fun. I am what you would call an extroverted introvert. So the idea of communal living does not necessarily appeal to me. So I would kind of be on your team there, Susie. I'm not sure that I would want to do this, but you know, she didn't really have much of a good choice. So that's sort of what got her here.
Well, that's right. That's
And
right.
I think, the Mommune situation is something that I kept seeing in the media. And so that's where the idea came from. And none of the women that were being interviewed were not like, we thought it would be fun to move in with our besties. It was like they suddenly found themselves as single mothers and they couldn't financially survive. And so that has really been the impetus for a lot of these Mommunes. But then I think, in an ideal situation, I think it works pretty well because then you have another
Right.
parent under the roof. And I did a lot of research on like this concept of like mommunes and communal living and like the pitfalls of it. And it was interesting to me. There's a lot written about this right now. And we are seeing more of these like communal living situations in the United States. They've always been much more common in other places, but in the United States, this is kind of a newer thing that we're seeing. And like social scientists and psychologists and people who are writing about this are saying that it's because the way that we live is so different now, where like, for hundreds of years, like if I would grow up in a town and then I would marry a boy from my town and I would live on the street with my mom and my grandmother and my sister and my sister-in-law. And then when we had kids, everyone's like raising the kids. But that's not really so much how we live anymore. This is what they're saying. I have no idea. This is not Kristy's commentary. This is like from my
Yeah.
research.
Right. Right.
But because we're not living that way anymore, we're having to like create those villages in different ways. And so when you put people in this situation of like single parenthood and, being financially strapped, I think it's an interesting idea. And I really did, when I went into this book, I was like, there are going to be a lot of pitfalls here in communal living. And like, here's what they're going to fight about. And here are going to be the problems. And I worked out a lot of this with my friends. Like we talked a lot about, okay, like if we lived together, like what would it be like? And what would you do? And what would I do? And as I got into the book, I was like, I mean, Grace's doing all the cooking.
Yeah.
Like Charlotte's week to do the laundry. And the next week it's Alice's week to do the laundry. And everyone's sharing carpool duty. And what's there to
I
fight
mean,
about?
it sounds good. I just,
It sounds amazing. I think it sounds great if you're a woman with children, if you're in your child raising years and for whatever reason your husband is elsewhere. I think it sounds amazing because you have help, you have someone that's a sounding board, and you have friends to be on the beach with every day. And it's I think it's a great way. I mean, and honestly, who would not want to live in Alice's house?
Well, who would
now,
want to know
Alice is just very philanthropic, though. She's just got this good heart that's taking care of.
It's not 100% philanthropic though. She's trying to redeem herself too.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
And I felt bad for Alice the whole time because she was trying to redeem herself from something that was totally not her fault.
That's
And
right.
I have another question about that, but I don't want to ask it now.
Misplaced guilt. Misplaced guilt.
Yeah, very, very misplaced guilt. Okay, so which came first, Kristy? The inspiration for this plot where, Charlotte's in this position where she has no other choice and she has to move in with this woman she doesn't know in this fabulous beach house, or the character of Charlotte, or one of the, which came first, one of these three characters or the idea for the story?
That's a good question, because I think really the impetus of the story is I feel like this kept popping up in the news. I kept seeing this like over and over and over and over again. And I was listening to a radio show one morning and this woman called in to like just berate these women who are living in this commune and tell them like they were the downfall of the American family and like they were ruining society, which was comical for a number of reasons. One, because they had just been telling these like horrible stories about their husbands had left them and like they're having to sue them every month to get child support. Like they're telling these horrible stories. And I'm kind of like, I don't really think it's their fault. Like, I don't think they
Right.
chose this, they're trying to make a nice life for their families and like survive. So the idea came from, I was like, what would people say about a commune in a small Southern town? And that was really the idea for the story. It wasn't even these women or their circumstances or any of their characters. It was like, what would be this push pull between like the reality of the situation and the perception? And I didn't want it to be like, I wanted it to be funny. I didn't want it to be like, I mean, there's some grains of truth in there, right? Like we're all Southern women. Two of us are Southern Susans on this screen. But like we kind of know that when you live in a small Southern town, there's a lot of gossip, right? It's just part of it. It's like a piece of the social currency. It's not really meant to be mean or like hurt anyone. I don't
It's
think
entertainment.
yeah,
Yeah.
in most situations, like it's just kind of like the fuel that the town runs on. And so to me, this book, the idea for this book really came from that. Like, what would people say? And then what would be the truth? And then from that, of course, I thought, I want to have a woman that's in charge of this commune who no one can quite crack and no one totally understands her. And it was interesting because we debated a lot about whether Alice should have 2 dead husbands or 3 dead husbands. And I was like, 2 doesn't feel like that many. Like 2 feels like very believable to me. 3, like now we can call her the Black Widow, right? And actually the first day of my tour, I met a woman who was like, my name is Alice and I have 3 dead husbands. And I was like,
Oh no.
Oh my
she was like,
God.
I didn't kill any of them. I was like, oh my God. But so all that to say, I think Alice came first. I think she was the first kind of like, which is interesting because we don't really hear from her for like the first quarter of the book. But and then I knew kind of right away. I was like, how am I going to take a woman who is, very independent and self-sufficient and put her in a situation where she has to move into this commune? She doesn't really have a choice. And so I was like, I have to stack these things on top of her that make it so that this seems like the most appealing decision. And I will say too, I mean, the idea behind this book is not all these women move in together and live for the rest of their life, right?
Right.
This is like a launching pad for these women, and
Sure.
particularly for Charlotte and Iris. Charlotte is never like, I'm going to go live in the commune for the next 11 years. Like she's like, I'm going to go live in the commune until I can get my act together and figure out like what's going on with my husband. And she doesn't have any money. I mean, that's the reality of a white collar crime. Is like your assets are frozen. It doesn't matter if you didn't do it. It doesn't matter if your husband didn't do it. If he's accused of it, you're financially linked and you're in trouble. So it all was kind of like a little, I didn't really answer your question, but it was all just like a little domino effect of like, okay, well, this would have to be Charlotte's situation and this would have to be Alice's situation. And but it really was, normally I feel like the character comes first for me, but this time it really was like this idea of this perception versus reality.
And I think this is not one of the questions, but it's just dawning on me. It's interesting, in your books that are a lot about women and women's friendships, it's about threes,
Yeah.
Alice, yeah, Julie, and yeah, Charlotte. It's interesting.
I had not thought of that.
I hadn't either till just you were just
That's
talking.
great. I love that.
Yeah.
You can tell who is the AP English teacher here.
Yeah. So when, when 100 years has gone by or whatever, and they think about Kristy Harvey and, and
Sure,
her
people are gonna
books,
be thinking about
and
me.
what are commonalities, they'll be analyzing about threes.
I do a lot of threes. That's interesting. I think 3 is a really great number because 3 innately causes conflict. When you have 4, everybody has a teammate. When you have
That's
2,
right.
it's the 2 of you against the world. When you have 3, it's innately going to breed conflict because someone's always going to be on someone's side, which I think is helpful for books. A little conflict.
Good analysis right there. Okay. So my next official question is how to think about, and it's again sort of an analytical one, how you keep readers guessing. And here's the disclaimer now. Susan usually says this, but we have spoilers on here. We assume that folks have read the book. So
Okay.
okay. you keep readers guessing about whether Bill is guilty or innocent. In other words, it's good plot twists. They work well. Now, because I, for one, pretty much believe Bill was guilty until the story began to shift. Did you always plan to reveal him as innocent, or did it kind of work organically? You went back and forth and let it just sort of developed itself.
So I went into this book thinking Bill was 100% guilty. 100%. I was like, he's guilty. He did it. Like, we're going to prove it. It's fine. I wrote one version of this story where Bill is guilty.
Okay.
And it was interesting because I felt like there was like a point in there somewhere that I was trying to make, but it like wasn't getting across with him being guilty. Like it ended up ultimately, I think, not being the point I wanted to make, right? Like Charlotte's and Iris like deciding to stay at the Mommune, like that's not an ending, right? That's just that's moving them. Like that would have been great if I was going to write a sequel. I think was ultimately what I ended up with in the end. I was like, this is a great ending if I'm going to write another book, but I'm not planning on it. So this is not a good ending. And there were a lot of things that went into that. Like one, I really wanted Alice to be redeemed in this book. And I felt like there was only one way to do that. And weirdly, my editor went along with it. I couldn't believe it. Are we going to talk about that or can I talk about that now?
Sure.
Okay. So
yeah, go ahead and talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just the idea that like one of Alice's husbands was not dead, and that was not part of the original book either, but I had left myself these breadcrumbs. Like, I don't know if you guys ever do this. If you're like, oh, like, I think this is going to happen. And then you get to the end and you change your mind, but you're like, I've actually left myself all these things. So I had left all these little breadcrumbs of like him being alive, and I hadn't even known that I had done it. So I think maybe like somewhere in my subconscious, everyone was like, well, he needs to be alive. And so then when Jeremy was alive, I was like, well, this is great. Like this could all be his fault. And I have a background in finance. And so it wasn't like a big leap for me to be like, this would be how he could have done it. And this is how it could look like he didn't. But my husband's cousin's wife is a federal prosecutor in the state of South Carolina, and she helped me tremendously with this book. And we proved Bill guilty and we proved Bill innocent. Proving Bill innocent was a lot harder.
I'm sure.
But she really helped me, and a lot of her colleagues did as well. So I think it wasn't, I don't even think I meant for it to be like, oh, there's twists and turns in the book. I wanted Alice to be redeemed. And I felt like she needed that for her story. And also like weirdly, again, I've got to like unsubscribe from some things. I cannot tell y'all the number of people, like I get the People magazine alerts like every, all the time. And because I love celebrity gossip, but then they talk about everything else too. So there were so many people that were like faking their deaths during this time. And it would be like, man discovered in Europe after fakes his own death. And it's like pictures of like, someone crying at his funeral and he's like faked his death. So then I was like, well, this is easy research. Like, it appears everyone's faking their death.
Hey, it's the end thing.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, this will work. But I wasn't sure if it was like maybe a bridge too far. So when I turned the book in, I remember saying to my editor, like, okay, like, I don't know if you're going to like this. And my editor and my agent both liked it. They were like, no, kind of think it works. We kind of agree. You can't redeem her unless he's alive. So, and then, his being alive kind of set everything in motion. And, yeah. So unfortunately, Iris had that burner phone, which was a real anecdote.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hop out of order in my list of questions because it's on kind of the same topic with Jeremy being alive. So as soon as, and I suspected that, I picked up on your breadcrumbs.
Okay.
So
that's the mystery writer.
Yeah.
You were one of the few.
When he came to the door, I knew that's who was at the door. I knew it.
Yeah.
But then he started talking, and the minute he said, it was hard for me to see you with other men, I thought he killed her other two husbands. Did you ever think about writing it that way?
I did. I did. So, and in fact, I think I did once. Well, I think ultimately, I do this thing that I just call like the kitchen sink, and I put so much into a story in the first like draft or two, and then I usually have to like pare things down because like, this is just too much for the reader to have to even contend with. So it's usually like the opposite. Like I overwrite, and then I'm like trying to take things out. And I think originally I thought, well, that would be really great, like if he actually had killed them.
I thought
But
so.
But then you've got to develop so much more plot.
I had to develop so much plot around how that happened. And I really felt like this, what I really wanted is this to be Alice's story and Alice's redemption. And so that piece of it wasn't as important to me. I mean, if one of her husbands was alive and he was a criminal, she clearly had not killed them all. So
Yeah.
but I did. I thought it would be really interesting. And also I'm not sure I'm ready for that, Susan. Like, I'm not sure that I could pull all that off. So
I definitely, it's like I wanted that to be the case
you too.
for Alice because I wanted her to be completely like, I mean, it's not like anybody really thought she
Maybe in
did.
the sequel.
Now, there you go. And we have another question about that. But
Okay.
I thought that was a whole other thing that yeah, actually a sequel, that would be great.
That would
Um,
really work. Or like a short story.
yeah. All right, Susie, I think we're back to your turn because I hopped.
Okay. Um, okay. Well, this is, more spoiler things, but I really was delighted that Merritt turned out to be the Juniper Shores socialite. I found it believable. Now I want you to talk about, for our listeners, how you went about preparing us to make that believable that a high school football star could be a Juniper Shores print gossip.
Well, so I didn't know. Well, okay. So Juniper Shore Socialite was not in the first couple drafts of this book. That was not an element of this novel. I added
Okay.
that in because I couldn't find a way that I was really liking to get this like idea of this is what people are saying and this is what's really happening. And I tried some different things, and I think when it was just like either like a gossip column or people talking about it, it felt kind of mean. And that wasn't, I wanted it to be funny. Like I wanted this to be like a
Yeah,
comic
and it
relief
is
part
funny.
of the
It
novel, or
is
like
funny.
at least light. If it's not ha ha funny, like I wanted it to be light. Like I wanted it to feel bubbly. I didn't want it to be like mean. So, so I thought, okay, well, what is a way that I could do this that would feel a little more fun? And so then writing those Instagram posts and like being able to kind of have that voice was, I thought, like a lighter way to do it. But I didn't know. So I didn't know that was going to be Merritt because I
But
didn't
I
know it was
find
going to
it
be
very
Merritt.
believable that he is. And I think you enjoyed writing those because the
Oh, I
wit
loved
is
it.
so good.
I loved it. I loved writing them. And I think Merritt has something to hide, right? So like
Right.
he's hiding something. And so I felt like, yes, like he is. And I think ultimately, I feel like I could have leaned in on this a little bit more. But if you go back through the posts and all of the things that he says are about what he ultimately achieved through being Juniper Shore Socialite are true. I mean, in the moment, like I'm sure this post stung, and in the moment he was putting people that he loved like through something, but ultimately it was for their redemption. And
Mhm.
so I thought that
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
He's a good and caring young man.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and I don't even know that I had planned on even like revealing who Juniper Shore's socialite was. Like I wasn't even sure that it was that like important.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
I've been disappointed if you hadn't.
Yeah. I
Oh,
think that was the right thing to do.
okay. But then when I got to the end, I was like, oh, it's totally Merritt. And then I could go back through and be like, this is why. And there were even moments like pivotal moments where like you see him on his phone or you see him doing something where, I mean, he's a
True.
teenager, so
True.
he's probably always on his phone. But like to be up, then that wasn't like a hard leap to make because I already had those scenes in there where he was like, you know,
okay,
Right.
so we've talked about Alice and her redemption story, and Charlotte and her um, journey with Bill, and is he innocent? Is he not innocent? And all that. But the third perspective we haven't really talked about, and that's Iris. How did you decide to include a teenage, a 14-year-old's perspective in this, and just kind of talk about that third perspective a little bit?
yeah. Well, I think of everyone in this book. I mean, I think Bill's arrest and crime. It's hard on Charlotte, but Charlotte has autonomy over her own life. Like educated woman with prospects. Like, she's going to be fine. She's going to get this back together. Like, she needs a minute, but she's going to be okay. I feel like things like this are often hardest on the kids because they have no say so. Like, Iris has no control over whether she moves into the mom unit. She can't help this situation at all. I mean, she does ultimately a little bit, but she does not have a lot of control over the situation. So I thought it would be fun to see her point of view, but then also, I just love the idea that kids are so resilient and, they can be going through like this horrible thing, but they're still worried about like, their golden gooses that are stuck in their house. And are your friends going to invite you to the sleepover because your dad's in jail? And, does the boy like you? I mean, I think they're like very, real things, but I also, there were parts of this story that I felt like kind of necessarily had to be heavy in the eyes of Charlotte. And that's not what I write. So I didn't want the book to feel heavy. And I thought, well, if I have Iris and like Charlotte is dealing with these very real things, and then Iris is having champagne and breaking into the house after the
breaking
sleep.
into the house, and yeah.
Then like we get that, because I didn't think it was super realistic for Charlotte to be like wading through all of this, but then like, let's go, whatever. I mean, like the party serves a very specific purpose because it's kind of like her showing that like I'm standing by my man kind of thing. But like her point of view is not fun, particularly. Like she's dealing with some really important things. So I felt like Iris was like a little bit of, she lightened things up for us.
She does. Yeah. Some relief.
And Alice is just not she's a very kind character, but she's not like
very empathetic character.
She's not like a fun character necessarily.
No, she is very kind, and but she's deep, Alice.
Yeah.
She's
an introspective character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think I know the answer to this now because we've been talking about so far. But I was going to ask, who is your favorite character and why? So let me see if I'm right when you give that answer.
Oh, that's a hard question. It's hard to pick a favorite of your mains, I think.
It is.
I think maybe Alice, though. Like, I feel like Alice is that who you thought? Yeah.
That's who I thought.
I think I felt a lot of like empathy for her because she had been through so much, and I think she blamed herself for so many things that weren't her fault, which I think we tend to do, especially I think women especially like tend to blame ourselves for things that are not our fault. Or like feel responsibility for things that we never could have been responsible for. And Alice is definitely, that type of character. So I did have a lot of like affection for her.
Right. I think we feel that.
Yeah. But I also, and I love the secondary characters too. I loved Grace.
Of course.
Yeah.
There was a lot with Grace going on that I think that's another spinoff that could be, I think.
I know. Well, and she came from a previous book, actually. So she was a tiny mention in A Happier Life. So the book launch that Keaton is working on in A Happier Life is for Grace Collette's book, Growing with Grace, when she gets fired. And so I had talked about like the party she was planning at Serendipity with the ice cream and the influencers with their children and the da-da-da-da. And so when I wanted to put someone in the house that was like this mommy blogger that appears to have this perfect life, when really she's like living at the mom unit and going through a divorce, but she likes it like that, so I think that's, that's such a conversation that I feel like we're having right now anyway, is like, what are we showing on social media? Like what's real and what's not. But I'm kind of the camp, like, I don't necessarily, I don't really want to see people's dirty dishes in the sink on Instagram.
No.
I have my own, and I don't need to see what yours look like because they probably look like mine, so I'm certain. So I think I was kind of team Grace when she's like, this is the place that I get to go where my world isn't falling apart. Like I get to be the person that everyone thinks I am in this corner of the internet. And it's great, and I think that's real. I think a lot of people are there for that. So
I think that is real. Okay. So which of these characters, you told us your favorite, which was the hardest character to develop?
I shouldn't have to think about that so hard. Maybe Alice too, actually. I mean, I think I had Charlotte, I feel like I kind of knew who she was and where she was coming from and like where she was going. And then Iris, was mostly like what you're dealing with at 14. So that was kind of fun. Um, but I think Alice was the most difficult just because I wanted her to have like an interesting backstory and I wanted you to kind of be able to see through time like how she had handled these different situations and how it had led her to where she was now. So I think she was probably the most difficult and wanting to like redeem her, I think was like very top of mind for me. So and I think I struggled a little bit with how to do that because I wasn't sure that I could pull off writing a book where Jeremy isn't dead.
Well, you did quite well.
Yes, exactly right.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've kind of answered the last question I was going to ask about knowing what was going to happen in the end, because we talked about Bill's guilt, innocence, and so forth. So I'm going to hold up the book, and it's kind of, wait a minute.
Oh, I will do that too.
Oh,
So
thanks,
it's
guys.
really pretty, and I
It
should
is
have
beautiful.
done that in the beginning, and bravo.
Well,
It's
thank you.
lovely.
I didn't have anything to do with the cover, but I really do love it. I think it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I love the pink spine.
I that was a
Yeah,
surprise.
that makes
I
it
didn't
very
know they were
eye-catching on
doing
the
that
shelf.
until it came in, and I was like, "Oh, the
Like
spine! It's so pretty. I love
It
it."
is pretty.
Yeah.
and eye-catching, which
All
is
right,
what
so
we
we have 2 more questions from the group. Tara Keegan says, "Does Kristy have her own mommune? I've seen her speak on it, and it's a great concept." And then she says, "Now we need that for dog moms."
Oh, that'd be a great idea.
You know, wait, was it Tara that said this to me? Somebody messaged me and was like, "You need to write a sequel about a dog yoon, like a dog mommy." And I was like, "That is adorable. That would be so cute."
I need that right now.
Yeah, I bet you do.
I do.
So I don't literally have a mommune in terms of like, a house that I'm living in with a bunch of other moms. But I definitely have like, a village and I sort of always have. And, I was thinking about right now in particular, like it's kind of funny timing for me to be like writing this book and going on this tour and talking about it because really and truly it's summer at home. Like if I didn't have my mom friends, I would be in trouble because they're like really like stepping up for me. I mean, my husband's at work and, they have my kid. Now, he's almost 14, so they're all just running wild anyway, and I will certainly repay them when I come back. But, yeah, I mean, I couldn't do what I do without my mom friends cuz like we all sort of help each other out. That's how it is. And thank goodness for that because I don't live near family and um it would be a really lonely feeling to not have like those people in your corner. So I'm
Exactly.
very lucky.
Yeah, I don't know what I would be doing without support from friends. And that's, even if it's not literally under the same roof,
Yeah.
the truth of it is the same.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Susie, do you want to take the last question from the group?
All righty. This is from Floyd Willis. I loved Beach House Rules and did not want it to end. That's always a good sign.
Thanks, Floyd.
Has Kristy thought of making it a series? I would love to know if Alice and Elliot get there happily ever after. The ending seemed like a good starting place for a new book. And I think you answered that earlier, but about
Yeah, I
not
don't
planning on a
100%
sequel.
disagree with that though. Like I mean, I do think I do this often because sometimes I'm not totally ready to be finished with characters. And like, for example, I mean, my 2026 book, it's not a sequel to Under the Southern Sky, but two of the secondary characters are main characters in my next book. And then there's like new people too. Um, but I really liked doing that. And so I think sometimes I do like leave myself these little windows. I think the idea that we end on um, Grace and Julie kind of starting this bed and breakfast. Like, I think there could definitely be more to that. Like, I definitely, I would love to see if Alice and Elliot end up together. Or, now I want to go with Susan's idea of like, Jeremy really killed the other husbands. and we get to find that out. A whole separate courtroom drama like going on. So Yeah, I could definitely see writing more of these characters. I'm not planning to, but I'm not planning not to. How about that?
Okay.
Good answer.
All right. So you started telling us what's next
Oh, yeah.
for your 2026 book. And my last question is what's next for you? So finish telling us a little bit more about that, please.
Okay, so I don't have a title for it yet, but um, it is about a NICU nurse who um, has like a very sort of traumatic situation happen to her where she is. And so she decides to move to this sleepy town of Cape Carolina to work in their much less stressful, like sort of step down nursery in the hospital. And the first day that she's there, there is an abandoned baby that is brought into the hospital who is discovered by Merritt, who was the baseball player brother of Parker in Under the Southern Sky. And then Aunt Tilly is also in this book. She was kind of like I think I got more emails about Aunt Tilly from that book than anybody else, but Aunt Tilly is sort of the like baddie Ann the attic whose boyfriend tragically died when she was 19, and she's just never been able to like kind of get over it. And I really thought, Under the Southern Sky wasn't her story, so it wasn't really her moment, but I was like, I want her to have her redemption. And so I brought Aunt Tilly back, and she and Daisy, who's this NICU nurse, their stories have a lot of parallels. They have a lot of things in common, and they end up becoming kind of unlikely friends who sort of bring each other back to life in all the ways that they need it. And there's musical theater too.
Oh, wow.
You can't beat musical theater.
Aunt Tilly is performing, she is playing Dolly Levi in the town's performance of Hello Dolly.
That's
So,
beginning to sound like my paternal grandmother.
Well, I can't wait to read that. I'm looking forward to it already.
oh, good. Oh, and I have another book coming in 2026 too.
Really?
Yeah. So I have another Peachtree Bluff book coming in the fall of 2026. And I was going to be called Peachtree State of Mind, but now I think I'm going to do something a little fallier. So I'm not, because it's a fall book and it's very, cozy, pumpkin spice-ish. Not really. It's more of the shenanigans from these women. But yeah, I wanted to write, I'd actually started it right after I finished Christmas at Peachtree Bluff. And I hadn't really mentioned it, and I got a new editor, and she was like, do you want to write another Peachtree Bluff book? I was like, indeed I do. So yeah, I'm very excited.
I don't know how you do all you do, Kristy. It's mind-blowing.
Well, you're
mind-blowing.
We're all just jugglers. We're all jugglers.
Well, you're a good one, I'll tell you that.
You're juggling a lot.
Well, Peachtree is, I think that some of this, I think this is how I get myself in trouble. And I wonder if you guys do this, but I love to write so much. Like, it is my true great love. Like, I really love it. So saying like, I'm going to write 2 books this year is like the best, because then I get to do this great thing that I love 2 times. And I block out, the like, oh, but you're going to have to promote that book and go on tour for that book and like, do all the things. And then that's when I'm like, oh, I think I took on too much. But I think we've got a good plan for like making it work for next year, to just kind of have 2 shorter tours, and like just because that's the part that's the challenging part, is like being away from home and figuring out like all the logistics of that. So the writing is so fun and I needed one more Peachtree Bluff book. So
it's a good series.
It is. Looking forward to that too. All right. Well, I think that's everything we have on our question list. Is there anything else you think we need to know?
Ladies. I don't think so. I just really appreciate you. I'm so grateful for this group, and you guys have always been so supportive of me. And I hope you like Beach House Rules, or you did. I hope you did like it, since we spoiled the whole thing. If you haven't read it, well, if you haven't read it, then
it won't matter. How many times have you heard other stories that you keep reading?
I know. And then you forget. I forget. No, I wouldn't say you. I forget. I'm like, oh. And then I'll get to it and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember them saying that. But like, I don't, when people are like, don't talk about the end of the whatever. And I'm thinking like, I don't even remember. Isn't that horrible?
Well, it's a wonderful, delightful book. And if anyone hasn't read it, don't worry about any spoilers you've heard today. Go right ahead and read it.
Well, thank you guys for having me. Y'all are the best.
Well, and safe travels to your next destination. We're catching Kristy in between events today.
Safe travels on the road, and have fun. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all so much.
Well,
Thank you so much.
we
Take
enjoy being with you.
care, as always. Bye.
Bye bye.